Here is Noah Hutchings and his guest, Malachi Martin.
Malachi, it's good to have you on the program today. Now, we're talking about the coming New World Order, or the New World Order.
Yes, if you listened carefully, I'm sure you did, I'm sure you listened to what President Bush and James Baker III, our Secretary of State, have been saying for now 2 years. They've both said, quite frankly, that Europe, Western Europe, the European community, and America are going to form one market, and that eventually the Eastern European countries, which sort of broke away from the Soviet Union, sort of, I say, because I shall explain what I mean by that, which broke away from the Soviet Union, sort of, and the Soviet Union itself, will all finally form one common market. And what's his name? James Baker III even said one day, speaking, I think, down in Texas somewhere, that this market would extend from Vladivostok, which is on the China Sea, is a Russian city on the China Sea, across the Russian heartland, across Western Europe, across the Atlantic, and over to the California beaches. This is the New World Order area, and that brings up the question of what is going to happen, what is happening in Europe, what is happening in Eastern Europe, what is happening in the Soviet Union. And let's take each one of those and take them in the backward order. Let's take the Soviet Union and the Eastern European countries. You know, there is a common persuasion, it's an illusion, that there was a revolution in those 5 countries of Eastern Europe, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Poland. And the people simply threw off the chains of the Soviet Union. The fact is, there was no revolution. The people did not rise. There was no revolution. What happened was that each of the strong men in charge of those countries from Moscow, a man called Erich Honecker in Germany, a man called Zivkov down in Bulgaria, a man called Milos Jakis in Czechoslovakia, and so on, they got a telephone call from Moscow saying, "Get out. Let the people in." The thing was consented to and arranged from Moscow itself. There was no revolution. Then the people took to the streets in joy at being liberated from the Russian presence, as 'twere. That's the first thing we must remember about the breakaway of the so-called revolution in Eastern European countries. There was no revolution. Moscow decided to skip its representatives, these horrible men it had in charge of these countries. They ground down the faces of the people with armor, military armor, and prisons and secret police. Number one. Number two, in Russia itself, we've been hearing for the last 2 or 3 years that Mikhail Gorbachev is on the plank, that he's finished, that he's going, that his plans are broken, that in a short time he will have disappeared. This man was never so powerful as he is today. Never so powerful. And the arm of his power, the 2 arms of his power, are still intact. One is the thing which the Russians call the Komitet Gosudarstvennoy Bezopasnosti, otherwise known as the KGB, or the KGB, as the Russians refer to it, KGB. And it's the secret police. It's more than a secret police. We speak about secret police as the arm of government. The KGB, or the KGB, is the government, and is the government which Mr. Gorbachev now presides over, of the reformed Soviet Union. It's a different setup from what our media tell us and from what popular commentators have given us as the view of facts. It's a different situation. The 2 arms he has, therefore, are the KGB, and secondly, the huge missilery of the Soviet Union, which is contained in bombers, missile bombers, nuclear missile bombers, contained in missiles, on-site missiles, mobile, and contained in the submarines. By the way, they're titanium-hulled submarines. We have no titanium-hulled submarines. They can dive deeper than any of our submarines and stay under longer. This is intact. It hasn't been dissipated. And the flower of the Russian army, the good core, which is about 900,000 effectives, as the military men say, is still intact. Sure, they have a raggedy army here and there, but the core of the army is intact with its aerodromes, its tanks, its arsenals, and its settlements. There's no budging of that. This is a formidable enemy, and they're still manufacturing their missiles and still manufacturing their guns and ammunition. Now, Mr. Gorbachev has made it impossible for us to say no, because he has gone to the West. He had two stages in his plans. First of all, the stage was to come and be seen. He actually wore trousers with a crease in it, and he had a wife, Raisa, beside him, dressed in a very, very fashionable way, and she charmed the West as a very cultured lady, and she is indeed. She lectures at Moscow University. She's very versatile, and she's multilingual, and she's a convinced Marxist, as indeed Mr. Gorbachev was and still is. The first thing was to make himself known, become the glad boy of the West, and he did. You remember, if you read the papers and saw the television, it was Gorby, 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 whether he was pressing flesh in chance for San Francisco, or Washington, or Chicago, or Detroit, or Paris, or London, or Rome. His popularity soared. He was considered to be the man who opened up the Soviet Union. And the picture he presented of the Soviet Union was that, well, you fellows in the West, you originally thought that we were just a big, ugly, stinking bear with claws, ready to kill you. Well, now we're just a little cuddly teddy bear who needs his diapers changed, and he's hungry, so help us. This was the message given in the first stage. The second stage was more difficult for him because it meant that he had to make himself accepted as a member of the West, as an inherent member of the market, the Western market system of America and Europe, which had achieved such economic prowess in the 40 years during which the Soviet Union went down economically, but up militarily. He did this in a very simple way. He knew there was a coup coming, the famous coup, in last August, 19. He was told it was coming, the Chinese said it was coming, we said it was coming, the CIA said it was coming, his own men said it was coming, two of his chief men, Shevardnadze and Yakovlev, resigned saying there's going to be a coup within a week. There was. Now, there's a common illusion about the famous coup in Moscow of August 1991 that Mr. Gorbachev sort of said to Raisa, let's get away from it all. Let's take the kids and go down and get some sun in the Crimea. And it's so childish, because it's just like as if President Bush could say to Barbara, Bobby, let's get out of here. Let's get up to Kennebunkport, get away from it all, and let's have some sun with the kids and some fishing. Everywhere Mr. Bush goes, he is, as every president is, goes surrounded by the presidential bubble. His instruments of war, his suitcase, the famous suitcase, and his Secret Service connections and protection, and his control of the executive branch of government. He never can take a vacation and go off sun his tummy with Barbara on the seashore by himself. It doesn't exist. Likewise with Mr. Gorbachev as president of the all-powerful Russia, Soviet Union. He could not go away, dive off and hole up in a bungalow on the Crimea, on the Black Sea shore, and pretend to forget it all. He went with the presidential bubble too. He knew there was a coup coming. He knew every step of it. And the funny thing was that we in the West looked at it all through a camera perched on a ledge overlooking the streets of Moscow. So the coup was a very funny thing. And by the way, it only took place in Moscow. We were only looking at the Muscovites milling around, and only some of the Muscovites, the major portion of the people in Moscow, were trying to queue up for food and earn their living every day. Only a couple of thousand, maximum 75,000 participated in the famous coup. It was a marvelous, as the French say, coup de théâtre, an act of theater, which led us all to believe that finally the Soviet Union was breaking up. And then we had the picture of the Soviet Presidium, or Parliament, talking about the independence of Kazakhstan, the republic, and the independence of the Ukraine, and the independence of Belarusia, all republics, and of the other republics. And the general impression was created that this bear had fallen to pieces, disintegrated in front of our eyes, and needed help. They were going to be hungry this winter. They had no money. They were going to be cold. They had no wheat. They had no milk for their children. No supplies for their hospitals. So hurry up, men in the West. Hurry up and help your neighbor. That was fine and dandy as a public propaganda. The fact is, though, in cold, hard terms, speaking behind closed doors across the green-top tables of power, the West was told, look, if you don't help us, it's chaos and it's war. Because we have vast populations. They're going to be hungry. We're going to let them move, not only in the Soviet Union, but in the satellite countries. They can't carry on. You're going to be swamped. Your own economy is going to be strained. You have to help us for your own sake. And we in the West, we have one great ability. We know how to make money. In fact, America invented the phrase to make money. In Europe, before America existed, people didn't make money. They either inherited money from their daddy, or they stole it, or they hadn't got it. We invented the idea of making money. You came to the States to make money, and money has that sacrosanct character for us. We make our dollars. We earn them, and they're ours. That's the idea of the American system, the open market system we have, where a man can earn his money and keep it. We hope. Nowadays with taxes, one wonders about that part of it. But anyway, over there, they hadn't got that idea. So we don't have this inherent ability and intention. And we saw huge markets arising in Eastern Europe and huge markets arising in the Soviet Union for the sale of our technology, for the sale of our instructions in technology, for the sale of our goods, the setting up of businesses, joint ventures, the giving of credits and loans. Our banking could profit from it, our manufacturers could, and we've taken to it, down to the glorious details of our common life in the United States. So what has happened is a very different thing. Slowly but surely, an amalgamation is taking place of our systems. We are shipping over to them all our material goods and material advances. We're not giving them one value of ours. Oh yes, we're giving the idea of democracy. That's going to be a long time taking on in the Soviet Union and in the satellite countries. There's some form of democracy, nothing like what we have. But even the democracy we're giving them is a democracy for material values, not for spiritual values. None of the spiritual values that still animate us, Noah, and we still have them, none of them are being given to the Soviets or given to Eastern Europe. We don't export those. We really export materialism. And we know that at home, in America, this materialism is costing us dear. It's eating into our vitals. But we're only exporting our materialism. And they have their mouths open, hungry for materialism. They want supermarkets. They want 2 cars in every garage and a chicken in every pot style. They want all our convenience goods and luxury goods. They want VCRs. They want radios. They want good housing. They want plumbing, indoor plumbing. They want good food. They want a variety of food. They want all we have. They want our fashions. They want everything we have on the material plane, but nothing of the spirit, nothing of religion, nothing of morality. Now, the present condition in Western Europe is as follows. There are the nations of the European Economic Community, the EC, as they call it, the European Community. They're shortly going to be swelled in their ranks with 5 other nations, Norway and Sweden, etc. That will be 17. It's a total of 370 million people, a very ebullient economy, very rich in natural resources, and very, very advanced in their technology. They are establishing close links with the Eastern European countries that were exclusively the domain of the Soviet Union. And the republics of the Soviet Union, mainly the western borderline states, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Belarusia, Ukraine, Moldavia, they are forming very close links with Western Europe already. And in time, and in a short time, they will be members of the European community. And that's going to be a very vast community because it's going to swell the ranks way beyond anything we know today. It's going to be a huge monolith, economic and financial, joined together by very strict rules and policed and governed by superstructures which now don't exist at the present moment, but which will regulate life, the daily life of millions, economically and financially. That's what's ahead of us. That is at least what is planned.
Malachi, as we look towards the New World Order and also the Scriptures, we read in 2 Thessalonians 2, Daniel 11, Revelation 13, that at one time in the future, this has not happened yet, it might be very near, that there is going to be a Superman who is going to rise, who will bend the will of all people whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life.
That's right.
And all the world is going to worship him, those whose
Right.
names are not written in the Book of Life.
That's right. That's what Paul tells us.
And you think that is coming?
That is coming, and he's called Antichrist. You know, Christ one day was talking to his contemporaries, and he said to them wonderingly, he said, I'm very curious about one thing. You people, in the evening time, will look at the red sunset, and you'll predict the following day, the weather. And he said, you look at the sky in the morning and see the clouds coming in from the Mediterranean over this land, and you'll tell me what's the weather going to be like. You can read the signs in the sky. Why can't you read the signs of the times? And similar with us, it's a question you can ask our contemporaries today. Why can't you read the signs of the times in the Oakland burning? Why can't you read the signs of the times in the serial killings? Why can't you read the signs of the times in the volcanic eruptions in our cities, in our homeless, in the spread of AIDS, this terrible scourge? There are signs that we're not reading them. These are all things saying to us, wake up, man. God is sending signs to you to know that he is displeased with the way human society has turned. There are millions starving, and you're in plenty. There are people on your own doorstep. There are scourges of morality. There's immorality. You have violated sonhood and manhood and daughterhood and the family. It's no longer holding together. You're not protecting yourselves. You're no longer able to make moral judgments in public. Your parliaments never consider the will of God, never consider the moral good of your nation. You just consider who is going to benefit the most. How can we slice up the pie?
By the way, speaking of signs of the times, it is our understanding that, according to the book of Daniel and other scriptures, that after Israel returns to the land, and there, after many wars, there will be a kind of a comprehensive peace treaty signed, but out of this treaty will come no peace. In fact, out of it will come war. Now we see a comprehensive peace arrangement there in Madrid. Why Madrid?
Madrid is sort of a neutral city. Noah, let's reckon all that up. First of all, let's look at Islam, the religion of Islam. Remember that the religion of Islam stretches from the Atlantic Ocean in Algiers over to Indonesia. It is 800 million strong. It is the fastest spreading religion in black Africa. For instance, I happen to know the country of Guinea very well in Africa. 82% of all blacks in that country are Muslims. They've been converted. It's spreading like wildfire. Now, Islam is a funny religion in ways. It's funny in the sense they're very different from Christianity. It gives you a book, the Quran. It says you can have several wives. It says kill your enemy. It says that Islam is the only religion, and all others are infidels and are impure, and they should not be on your land. Stuck right in the middle of Islam is the tiny state of Israel, like a fishbone in the gullet of Islam. They can't swallow it, and they can't cough it up. And there is a hatred for Israel that cannot be wiped out in the present mind of Islam, of the Muslims. No matter how many hostages are given back, this macabre exchange that they're forcing on us, a body for a body, a bit of a body sometimes for a bit of a body, which is so macabre, so inhuman, so ungodlike, so unworthy of Islam even, in its worst form, that there is no way in the present mentality of Muslims from Algiers to Indonesia that Israel can finally be accepted. Israel stands alone with its back to the sea and its face towards countries bent on destroying it. So, what can we expect from the Middle East conference? Well, we can expect a temporary peace. We can expect some exchanges to guarantee a bit of peace here and there. But lasting peace? Oh no. Oh no. I don't expect it anyway. I wish I could say yes, Noah, but no, it's impossible. As long as the opposition and enmity and hatred, it's a real hatred, exists from the Arab side to the Israelis. And, we grumble an awful lot about Prime Minister Shamir and the conditions, the difficult conditions he's imposed on James Baker to get this conference together. But just look at Shamir's position for the present moment. He has a narrow little band of land. It's surrounded on all sides, all three sides, by enemies who want to destroy it, who say they want to destroy it, who are in a condition of war with Israel, and on the fourth side by water. There's no other place for them to go, Noah. They have nowhere to go. It's either there or they're dead. Number one. Number two, look at the conference itself. Our biggest pal at the present moment is a man called Hafiz Assad. Who is Hafiz Assad? He's the strong man, the dictator of Syria. Now, we all know the evil and the crimes of Saddam Hussein. Believe you me, Hafiz Assad is a worthy companion of Saddam Hussein. There was a town, a city in Syria.
Malachi,
Yes.
I think our time has run out, and
All right.
I would like to tell you something about this town in Syria because I was there.
Ah.
So on the broadcast tomorrow, we'll continue this subject, and I think you want to enlarge on the changes that you expect that we're going to see in the world, say, over the next 7 or 8 years.
Yes, I would.
So you'll be listening tomorrow, and we're going to on the broadcast today, we're going to continue our discussion with Malachi Martin, where we left off yesterday. We were discussing the conference about a Middle East comprehensive treaty that is convened in Madrid, Spain, and we were talking about the characters involved in this conference, and one of them was Assad of Syria. And Malachi, will you come now and tell us something about Assad, and again why you do not believe that though a treaty may be signed here, it won't be a lasting treaty?
Yes, well, this Hafiz Assad, the strongman dictator of Syria, has committed as many and more crimes than Saddam Hussein of Iraq. For instance, there was one town in Syria inhabited totally by Christians, and all he did was surround the town with howitzers, blew the walls down, and then sent in his soldiers with bayonets, and they bayoneted to death 15,000 men, women, and children. He did the same in Palestine, in Lebanon. He simply plastered the walls and then sent in men with knives and bayonets and killed everybody, those who didn't escape by sea. His prisons are full of political prisoners. His torturers were trained by the Soviets. He is a very violent man, amassing huge wealth for himself and his family and his clan. And this is our associate. This is the man we're going to rely on to be honest. I mean, we made the same mistake with Saddam Hussein before he went into Kuwait. We were treating him as an equal, as somebody to be trusted. So this is one of the members. And it must be said, quite frankly, that the people participating in the Middle East Conference, I don't think anybody can say they want peace. They want to acquire a position for themselves from which they can exercise more power and ultimately destroy Israel as a state. There can never be peace, finally, between the Muslims and Israel in the present mentality of Islam. I don't think it can come about. We can have a temporary peace until it's violated all over again. That's why the Israelis, under Shamir, have been so cautious, have been making such demands, and are insisting on getting more immigrants, because remember that they lack manpower. There are, 4.5 million Israelis at the present moment, versus literally millions, hundreds of millions of Muslims. The situation is not good, and until the back of Islam is broken and it ceases its hatred and enmity of Israel, we're going to have no peace in the Middle East, because the Israelis are not going to get out of their land. They have nowhere to go, literally nowhere to go. They have their backs to the water, the Mediterranean, and on three sides they're surrounded by people who hate them, who want them dead.
You mentioned the ruler of Assyria, the dictator of Syria, and the town where 15,000, mainly Christians,
Right.
were slaughtered. We were in that town, and I led a group of 103 Christians on a tour. We were touring through the Middle East, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Israel, and we stopped at that town, it's Homs, around noon one day, and the school was out, the high school and the college in the center of town there, and the children just mobbed us, wanted to talk to us, friendly, just warm people, trying out their English on us, and they were just fine people.
I know.
And I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks after we were there, we received news that Assad had sent his men in there and killed some 15 to 20,000 of those people with whom we were talking to just a few weeks earlier.
Yeah, killed men, women, and children with bayonets. They didn't even use bullets.
That's tragic. And speaking of the conference, of course, it's being held in Spain, which, of course, is a predominantly Catholic country, and the king there is Juan Carlos.
That's right.
There are some who have mentioned Juan Carlos as a possible leader of the common market.
He is a possible leader. There's no doubt about that.
But you also, I think, have another idea who might be the leader. Is that correct?
Yes, I have. I'd like to see Juan Carlos leader, but I don't think so. I think the man who really ambitions to be leader and has a chance is our old friend Mikhail Gorbachev, because he can do much more for the Soviet Union and for his plans by being president of the new Europe than he can be by being president of the Soviet Union. And he's very popular. And it would be typical of the West and Western leaders if they allowed him take the job, offered it to him, and when he consented to take it, give it to him, because they think that this is the way to deal with Mr. Gorbachev. I don't happen to think so. I have a very different idea how to deal with Mr. Gorbachev and his kind. But that's the way we deal with them. So I think we may be faced with that as a proposition. Somewhere down the line, maybe one of the big surprises we catch one of these days.
Yes. Malachi, you mentioned changes that would come into the world or in the social, religious, political, economic realms over the next few years. We know that things are changing so fast. No one knows at this time what the world will be like even a year from now.
That we don't. Then you see, just reflect for a moment on how we govern our country. We have the Senate and the Congress. And the Senate and the Congress, of course, enact legislation and make speeches and enact legislation and then make the laws and that sort of business. But we all know, that what governs Congress and what governs the Senate and the Congress are the lobbies, the major lobbies, like the insurance lobby, which is the biggest lobby there, and the agriculture lobby, the farmers lobby, and the automobile lobby, and the road lobby, and the electronic lobby, and all the other lobbies are the banking lobbies. And there are hundreds of these lobbies. And they, of course, lobby for the interests of their members. And if it's the farmers, they fight for the farmers. If it's the automobile manufacturers, then they fight for them. That's fine and dandy, as long as we were talking and they were lobbying about American interests at home. The difficulty is that if we get into, which we are getting into, a new economic system where our export and import are governed by rules drawn up to suit other nations as well as ours, the behavior of these lobbies is going to be different, because now it will not only be the American farmers' lobby that will be powerful to make laws binding on American farmers, but it will be the lobbies in France and Germany and all the other members of the European market with which we will be joined. So this is going to modify the fortunes and the fate of farmers, and similarly with insurance, similarly with automobiles, similarly with every other form of manufacturing and production. This is going to modify our jobs and affect our money, and that affects our families, our family life, our careers. So that's one big modification going to come. Secondly, then, there's the modification of education, severe education. Do you know that already for a couple of years, since 1985 at least, there's a group in Moscow, Informatik it's called, and there's a group in this country connected with the Carnegie Endowment Fund, who have been drawing up common curricula for high schoolers in the Soviet Union and in the United States. The only difference will be the language, but the common curricula imposed by the state.
In other words, schools in the United States and Russia will be teaching from the same textbooks.
That's right. That's right. And that means that the idea of values, which we had originally embedded in our education, because I got values in my school, I'm sure you did too, they'll be out, because that's not common. There's going to be no common values, moral values or religious values. This will be merely factual education, and an education totally devoted to training minds, young minds, to participate in the activities of the New World Order, economic and financial, and technological and scientific. And this is a big change in education. It means also that the direction of education is taken totally out of the hands of parents. And that means the parents have to abdicate a duty they have to rear their children as Christians. And that affects the morality of the family. It affects the unity of the family. And those are big changes. And God knows those changes will affect families very deeply. And we're not ready for that yet throughout the country. Besides that, then, there are other changes going to take place, because we're going to find that the idea of patriotism, the idea of the flag, the idea of America first, God bless America, all these are going to be modified necessarily, because we will be allied with people who are not Americans, who haven't got our flag, who don't trust in God, who are not one nation under God, who don't want anything like that. They're not even Christians. This is all going to be a big change for us, and it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. We have, of course, throughout the academia of America, we have a set of people who are atheists already, and who eschew all religion, and consider that religion should have no part whatever, and religious morality should have no part whatever in the education of anybody, high schooler or college grad. And they're going to have a field day, because that's the type of education which is coming. And I can see many parents saying, no, I can't send my child to the public school. But the laws on homeschooling and public schooling may change, and they may be forced to. And it may come to the point that you'll have to be a heroic Christian to rear a Christian family. These are dire changes, Noah, and they bode a change in the political winds, the political behavior of this country. And it also means that local politics at the state level and at the city level and national politics at the Washington level is going to be modified. We will no longer be acting as a superpower. We'll be acting as members of a vast new arrangement of nations. Sure, we'll be one of the biggest for a while anyway, unless this recession goes backwards and catches us off guard and sends us into a depression, which some people think. I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not an economist. But we will only be one of many, and we will be bending to rules made to suit the many, not to suit us exclusively. And this is going to affect the right we have to bear arms. It's going to affect the way we travel. It's going to affect the prices of our food and the currency with which we pay for that food. There are big changes coming, and we're not ready for it as a population.
How about the economic system or the financial system that you spoke about on a former program? How about the unit of exchange?
Well, the unit of exchange, it's an open secret, spoken about in banking circles. They already have figured out a unit of change, and they already have even samples printed for its like. We're going to have a common unit of change you can use here or in France or in Russia. They have to, because the idea of convertibility, converting rubles into yen or marks or francs or dollars, the accounting systems in all these countries are different. They're not together. And then you must remember that each of the satellite countries of Eastern Europe have a different currency from each other. Each one has a different one. And there's no homogeneity between in the convertibility rules. So that's all a mishmash that must be solved by a single stroke, creating a new currency and abolishing all the others.
When I was in China this past month, I picked up one edition of the China Daily, and there on the front page, and I still have the paper, it's on my desk, it says China readies to enter the New World Order.
That's right. China's going to enter. China's the big problem because the leadership is aging. The population is growing. It's a huge population in spite of the strenuous efforts at birth control, the killing of babies and abortion, the exposure of female babies, etc. It's still going on. But in spite of all that, it is, and it's taken to capitalism far faster than the Russians have, and it's going to compete long before the Russians compete. One major difficulty arises from the fact that it has a common border 4,000 miles long with the Soviet Union, and they both are armed to the teeth. And unless something is done, that will be the next area in which Mr. James Baker should exercise himself, or will probably exercise himself. Unless something is done to create a better climate between those two countries, there's going to be trouble. But I'll tell you, Noah, I'm a believer. And I know that my God created this world to be saved, not to be ruined. And he sent his only begotten Son to effect a spiritual salvation of all men in mercy and goodness and compassion and forgiveness of sin. I know all that. I'm not preaching at you. I'm just telling you my opinion and my beliefs. And I believe that somehow or other, in spite of the dangers encroaching on us, in spite of the red menace from China, and in spite of its horrible dictatorship, in spite of the persistent communism and Marxism of the Soviet apparatus, which is still there, let's not fool ourselves, and in spite of the fact that in every town and hamlet throughout the satellite countries, as in Russia, as in all the Russian republics, communists are still in power and still running the country, in spite of that fact, and in spite of the corruption we have in our souls in the West. We're corrupted by our wealth and our luxury and our pride. In spite of all that corruption, East and West, I think God will draw out of this a salvation from men. Do you understand me? But we will have to pay a price. God always exacts a price. We pay our dues. And I think that's where we're heading. In the next few years, we're going to pay our dues. One way or the other, we're going to pay them.
We read in Revelation 11:18 concerning the return of the Lord Jesus Christ that he is not coming back to destroy the world,
no,
but to save the world from those who would destroy it.
That's exactly it. Because remember, you're a good Bible man, Noah. You know the mark of Satan is death.
Yes.
When God was admonishing Adam and Eve, he said, don't touch that tree, because if you do, you will die the death. And the sign of Satan, the real sign of Satan's presence and effectivity and success, is where death reigns. Death of the body and death of the soul.
Now, in your book, you speak about the struggle between the West and the East,
right,
for control of the New World Order, or who's going to be the main power chief, who's going to run the show. What is the motivation for President Bush in all this? We know that he has been a member of the Skull and Bones.
Right.
If that has any significance.
No, I think in this matter that we must regard President Bush. He's a very clever politician. There's no doubt about that. And he's a very clever diplomat. And he has vast experience in China, at home with the CIA, and in government as vice president, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he's a tough man. This man has a very tough face, and he deals ruthlessly with the situation. He doesn't always seem to make a moral judgment. He seems just to make a political judgment, but whatever. In the whole matter of the New World Order, he's a spokesman. He's a point man, nothing more. Because his actions must be dictated by those who finally have the source of power in the present materialistic world, money. And finally, it is they who say, this is the way it will go, or that's the way it will go. He is the political leader and spokesman for the wise men of the West, as they call them, the wise and strong men and rich men of the West. And he is spokesman for them. His membership of various groups has educated him one way or the other in this or that or the other. He was a member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Affairs, as all our public figures and personages and diplomats are and have been for the last 50 years. So that's merely a common trait he shares with everybody. There's no doubt about it that is the body of opinion which is shaping America's policy and shaping America's future and shaping the future of the world. But at that stage, we're talking about a transnational mentality, Noah. No longer American, no longer European, no longer African, no longer Asiatic, no longer Soviet, no longer Russian. It's this new thing, a frightening concept of a transnational mind, not tied to one country. It's a frightening thing to think that there's going to be no difference between the men of Tokyo and the men of New York, or the men of Miami, or the men of Oklahoma City. Finally, they will all be the same, because we're used to the differences. And one of the big difficulties Americans have in settling down to the present moment is that we no longer have an enemy. Hey.
We read that God divided the nation and set the bounds of their habitation. Do you think this New World Order, then, is a violation of God's edict for human government?
Oh, I think that the New World Order in its concept is a violation of God's will, chiefly because it's not seeking God's will. He's willing to allow us have a certain amount of free will, but in the final count he arranges everything. He's the Lord of history. And he manages to take all the loose threads and skeins of history and bind them together into the marvelous fabric of his salvation. It's the mystery of predestination. It's the mystery of God's will. It's the mystery of his administration of the world. Now, if men get together and they recreate the human family, and they gather them together in a new economic and financial structure that spans all nations and all races and all languages, and in that spanning structure he is not honored, he is not venerated, his will is not thought, and his values are not honored, what do you think he's going to do? Well, what he did at the Tower of Babel.
Yes, I would like to refer to the second Psalm. I think that illustrates exactly what you are talking about. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, but let's break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us.
That's exactly it. You quoted the right text.
Well, Malachi, I see our time is gone.
Yes, unfortunately, the only thing we capitalists can't buy, Noah, is time.
Yeah. Yes. But it's been a delight to have you on our program. Your insight into the political, financial, and religious affairs of this present world leading to the New World Order, I think have been fascinating and very profound, and we appreciate you being with us. Malachi, I hope to talk to you again.
Oh, no, I hope so, and may God bless and be with you in the meantime.
Well, thank you, sir.
God bless you, Noah.